They shall be my sons, and in them will live the hopes of a united humanity. Theirs will be the strength to prevail, not only when victory lies within easy reach, but even when it seems unattainable, when doom settles like a shroud over all. In those times of darkness, my noble sons will shine the brightest of all.
The Primarchs of his Imperium changed the skeins of fate irrevocably. Noble paragons and scheming tyrants, though the fate of each of the Emperor's sons diverged on paths of damnation, revelation, desecration, and salvation, one among all would be the torchbearer of a resurgent empire. For today, we shall continue our elucidation of a son of the Emperor, tasked with the monumental duty to provide sanctuary and renewal for the ever-waning Imperium. The avenging son of Ultramar, Roboute Guilliman. In the wake of the Horus Heresy, the Imperium lay in ruins. Untold billions had perished over the span of 7 solar cycles, the traitor rebellion led by Horus Lupercal culminating during the Siege of Terra. Waves upon waves of zealots, despots and tyrants hurled themselves against the walls of the Imperial Palace, the guns of valiant Imperial fists, White Scars, Blood Angels, ragtag Astartes warbands, and millions of mortal soldiers stemming the tide of darkness. Yet the mightiest of all legions, the Ultramarines, were long distant from the fulcrum of humanity's destiny. Their ravaged numbers from the betrayal of Calth had been cut off from the wider Imperium due to the birth of the Ruined Storm. Despite all haste being made to support the Loyalist war effort on Terra, the 13th arrived too late to prevent disaster. Sanguinius, Primarch and Great Angel of the 9th Legion, was slain by the War Master. The Emperor had purged the Champion of Chaos from existence with a blast of his immense unrestrained psychic might, yet incurred a mortal wound from the Talon of Horus. Rogal Dorn's expertise as a guardian of humanity had been tested to their limits. The bravery of the Great Khan, Jagatai, nearly costing him his life, and those that survived of the Defenders of Terra tasted a victory so bitter, many questioned if defeat would have been preferable. Upon the debris of a fallen empire, the corpses of many a valiant soul littered the soil of the throne world. The Dark Angels and Vilka Fenrica arrived soon after, their hunger for retribution denied as the flames of war ebbed with the full retreat of the traitors. Dorn was inconsolable in his failure to protect the Emperor. The Blood Angels languished at the loss of their noble liege, the Wolf King of Fenris and Lion of Caliban screaming oaths of vengeance against their hated foes. Only one man could organize these crestfallen demigods and renew them with purpose. Roboute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, stood tall and refused to give in to despair. His duty to preserve the Imperium and enact reprisal against its aggressors unbreakable. Sating his brother's appetite for a reckoning, Guilliman assumed command of the Lords of Terra, and once entrusted with the title of Lord Commander of the Imperium, enacted the Great Scouring. Many worlds remained in the clutches of Chaos influence, yet every legion had incurred losses of thousands of their kinsmen. Though a shadow of their former might, the Ultramarines remain the single largest fighting force of the Legiones Astartes by a large margin, and as such, were honor-bound to fight at the vanguard of the Loyalist reprisal. The resource-rich eastern realm of Ultramar dispatched supplies, warriors and aid alongside the influence of Terra's domain. Decades passed until order was restored, each Loyalist legion driving the disparate traitor warbands into the Eye of Terror and dark corners of the Void. Yet such vast military power had proven catastrophic to the safety of humanity, and with their duty to contain the spread of chaos complete, Roboute Guilliman devised a means to prevent such calamity from ever repeating itself. Guilliman held within his grasp the single largest fighting force remaining to the Imperium. His legion alone comprised half of the remaining Astartes loyal to humanity, and in his own way, held authority and power in reflection of his fallen brother, Horus. Knowing in his heart that such power could not be entrusted to a single man, no matter their station nor intention, Guilliman devised a means to prevent such power falling into hands unable to bear such burdens. Transcribing a tome outlining the new conventions to be adopted by the Space Marines, the Codex Astartes, every legion, no matter their size, must reorganize their remaining strength into smaller chapters. Each autonomous band of the newly founded Adeptus Astartes could not bring to bear strength in excess of 1,000 Space Marines, for to hold such power threatened to embolden future autocrats who lacked wisdom and humility. Further doctrines within the Codex outline preferred methods of waging war and even micromanagement of ranking structure. Though several Primarchs balked at such limitations, none dared to declare themselves exempt from vice. 7 years following the end of the heresy, the Adeptus Astartes took to the stars. Most legions capable of dividing into as few as 5 chapters, the Ultramarines sired as many as 23 successors. Entrusting fiefdom worlds, armaments and supplies to each chapter, led by heroic veterans of the Civil War, each army of the Adeptus Astartes began their journeys to eke out legacies anew. Yet Roboute Guilliman's work was not complete, for traitors still skulked within the midst of the Imperium's domain, and so it was that the Lord of Ultramar ventured to the world of Escrador. Facing the Alpha Legion, led by their Primarch, Alpharius, though it is claimed the Lord of Serpents fell at the hands of the Primarch of the 6th Legion, Rogel Dawn, another claimant of his stature, duelled the Lord of Ultramar. Slaying Alpharius in single combat, none can claim to know the veracity of whether such an individual truly was the Primarch of the 20th, for his head has been claimed many times, and the multi-headed Hydra has legion to spare. Bloodied from their engagement with the Alpha Legion, Guilliman realized the need for contingents should he fall in battle, which must be put into place. Collaborating with Archmagos Belisarius Cawl of the Mechanicus, the Lord Commander charged Belisarius with 2 responsibilities of paramount import. First, he must develop a means to revive him should he fall, for it was no act of vanity to surmise that his death could never be replaced and was crucial in preserving the Imperium. Second, a new breed of warriors were needed to combat the threats of chaos and their malevolent benefactors, for never in the history of the wars of the Imperium had a foe this dangerous inflicted such wounds upon humanity. Such foresight proved fortuitous, for the next Primarch Guilliman faced proved to be a far deadlier foe. Fulgrim, Primarch of the Emperor's Children, lurked within orbit of the world of Thessala, and during 121.M31, the Ultramarines chapter and their successors sought to purge his influence once and for all. Transcended into the form of a demon prince, the Lord of Ultramar fought bravely against his many-limbed foe, yet could not hope to match the martial skill of this abominable duelist. Wounded by a poisoned blade as it bit into his neck, Guilliman collapsed as the venom of its edge coursed through his veins. Rescued by the captain of the 2nd Company, Aeonid Fiel, the Ultramarines retreated from the battle and interred Guilliman's body within a stasis field in order to prevent his inevitable death. For 10,000 years, Roboute Guilliman sat immobile, entombed within a shrine to his grandeur inside the Temple of Correction. Pilgrims aplenty voyaged to Macragge to witness the splendor of the Primarch for millennia to come, a contrasting pristine mirror to the Emperor's slowly deteriorating stature atop his golden throne. Decades passed, centuries, entire millennia, waxing and waning with no sign of life within the Primarch shrine. The fortress of Hera, which housed his shrine, was a marvel created by the Primarch's own hand centuries prior. Its marble edifice embellished with adamantium and plasteel, the envy of even the techno-magi of the Adepts of Mars. Many claimed the wound of the great Primarch's neck showed signs of healing, Yet those who uttered such assertions, with time, perished. The hopes of naive souls seeking a droplet of hope within a desert of despair. Ultramarine chapter masters, heroes and legends of old, fell. The stalwart champions of the former legion, such as Marius Gage, Aeonid Fiel, and Remus Ventanus, entombed with honors upon Macragge, whilst their Primarch clung on to life. For 10 millennia, Belisarius Cawl toiled, his audience with a vision of the Emperor, and orders from the Lord of Ultramar, fueling his meticulous crafting of the Armor of Fate and his Primaris Space Marines. The forces of chaos did not stand idly by, for every loyal son of the Master of Mankind was dead or missing. Yet those fallen children who remained further desecrated his legacy with pacts to the ruinous powers and acts of destruction. Bereft of the guidance of the Emperor and his noble sons, rot and decay set within the bones of the Imperium, its carrion empire fated a slow and ignoble death. Horrors from beyond the void spilled forth, the great devourer consuming entire planetary biomasses as mere morsels for their endless hunger. The infinite empire of the Necrons awoke from their slumber, the height of humanity's reign now over, allowing for their resurgent reclamation of the stars. Greenskin wars came and went, yet had threatened the extinction of humanity during the era of the War of the Beast, and required concerted efforts to diminish their rampages. The naive Xenos of the Tau Empire expanded from their insignificant kingdom, whilst the ghosts of the Eldari refused to embrace their extinction in the face of overwhelming adversaries. Yet the greatest of all threats, the forces of the Immaterium, rallied under the banner of their chosen war master, Ezekyle Abaddon. Former first captain and inheritor of the Lupercal's legacy, Abaddon the Despoiler enacted several Black Crusades to further his own master plan to eradicate the Imperium. Most infamous of all was his 13th Black Crusade, a campaign which saw to the destruction of the fortress world of Cadia and birth of the Cicatrix Maledictum. Dividing the galaxy in half, humanity's territories to the east were dubbed as the domain of Imperium Nihilus and cut off from the light of Holy Terror and the glory of Ultramar. Abaddon had fulfilled the next stage of his ultimate goal to spread the influence of chaos, the birth of the Great Rift exacerbating imperial travel, supplies, military maneuvers, and heightening the incidence of psychic awakening. Setting his sights upon Ultramar, the Despoiler's victory at Cadia emboldened his Black Legion to seek another linchpin objective to ensure the dominion of the War Master, the death of Roboute Guilliman. Though Cadia had fallen, many had survived its destruction. Belisarius Cawl had ventured to the fortress world in order to ensure the protection of the Necron pylons upon its surface, for such artifacts prevented the spread of the Immaterium across the galaxy. Throughout Abaddon's crusades, the War Master had reduced such pylons across many worlds to rubble, the proverbial dam of the rising tide of the warp close to bursting. Cawl had been unsuccessful in his endeavor despite the aid of unlikely allies such as the Necron Overlord, Trazyn the Infinite, the destruction of the Cadian pylons and trauma caused in the wake of the planet's death, causing the Eye of Terror to erupt. Fleeing from the devastation wrought by the Despoiler, Belisarius alongside the Celestinian Crusade of Cadia fled with all haste to the Sanctuary of Ultramar. Knowing the intent of Belisarius and his band of misfit warriors, Abaddon dispatched his Black Legion to pursue the Celestinians, whilst a portion of his men, aided by the Iron Warriors, Night Lords, and other disparate warbands, lay siege to Ultramar. Meanwhile, the birth of the Great Rift had awoken the ancient Eldar god of the dead, Iniad, its influence choosing a prophet to proclaim its return. Yvraine, daughter of Shades, had been chosen and imbued with strength on the precipice of death within Commorrah's Crucible Arena. Demonic forces of Slaanesh beset the Dark City during the Night of Revelation, and with the rebirth of Yvraine, the mysterious Visarch aided in her escape to the craftworld of Biel-Tan. Forming the Inari, the Reborn, To facilitate the cycle of death and rebirth, in order to salvage the fate of the galaxy, the Eldar rescued the Celestinian Crusade from the pursuing Black Legion. Joining their forces in their venture to Ultramar, the Pilgrims arrived to find the sector besieged by the forces of Abaddon. Already harried by chaos, greenskin, and Tyranid invasions for decades, the beleaguered Ultramarines chapter and its allied successors had been prevented from venturing far from their domain. Yet this day above all was the most brutal invasion effort inflicted upon their bastions. Chapter Master Marneus Calgar, with aid from the Grey Knight, Grandmaster Uldric Voldus, held back the wrath of the Despoiler's pawns until the Celestinians arrived within the Temple of Corrections. In audience with Marneus Calgar and his advisors of Varro Tigurius, Severus Agaman, and Uldric Voldus, Belisarius Cawl revealed his work of 10,000 years. The armor of fate, crafted by order of Roboute Guilliman to preserve his life, was complete. Yet alone, this work of technological genius would not suffice in restoring the Primarch. Yvraine of the Eldari, as the chosen of the Eldar god of death, could cast a ritual to revive Guilliman, and combined with the armor of fate, the Emperor's son would arise. Chief Librarian Tigurius advised that his visions revealed portents of this day, and he believed in his heart that the Xenos could be trusted. Allowing Cawl and Yvraine to minister to the Primarch, Marneus Calgar ordered his men to defend the Temple of Hera with all available hands. The Black Legion concerted their efforts in bringing the temple down as hordes of heretics spilled to the epicenter of this renewed activity. Black Templars of the Celestinians, Grey Knights of the Third Brotherhood, and hundreds of Ultramarines bitterly fought to preserve the temple, their valor and martial skill regardless paling in comparison to the sheer number of opponents swarming their position. Until he arose. Roboute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines and avenging son of the Emperor, strode into the fray, wielding the Emperor's own flaming sword within his armored fist. Carving swaths through the traitors, the Ultramarines and their allies felt their spirits soar at the sight of this warrior of legend. Driving the Black Legion from the temple, Guilliman looked upon his war-wearied and battered descendants. Requesting Chapter Master Calgar's permission to assume total command of Ultramar and his chapter, the Lord of Macragge knelt and surrendered his command to his restored and noble Genesire. The traitors would pay this day, for the hope of the Imperium's resurgence was born. Driving back the traitors from Macragge, Roboute Guilliman sat upon the long empty throne of his homeworld and was coronated as the returned Lord of Macragge. The heady days of the 500 worlds were long gone, yet Guilliman resolved to restore his realm to its former glory. Retaking several planets and quashing traitor forces with breathtaking tactical brilliance and sheer genius of warfare, Guilliman, now in command of the vast resources of Ultramar, was a sight to behold. Within a mere 7 solar months, Macragge and most of the territories of Ultramar were cleansed of chaos filth. Yet the longer the Avenging Sun busied himself with his own empire's prosperity, the longer the Imperium entire stultified. The Imperium of old was long dead. Its scientific ingenuity and prosperity collapsed under the weight of dogma and ignorance. In order to heal the wounds inflicted upon humanity, Guilliman must seek counsel from its master, the Emperor. Assembling an army comprised of the Ultramarines' 1st, 2nd, and 3rd companies, Grey Knight's 3rd Brotherhood, and remaining might of the Celestinians, including the Black Templars, Guilliman forged his new path. Embarking upon the Terran Crusade, many dangers imposed by the ruinous powers promised to bar the Avenging Sun from the throne world, yet such a journey must be taken. Entrusting Marneus Calgar with the defense of Ultramar in his absence, the Avenging Sun ordered the 2nd Company Captain, Cato Sicarius, to serve as his lieutenant in this endeavor. Intercepted by the Thousand Suns Traitor Legion and their Red Corsairs allies during their voyage past the Maelstrom Warp Rift, the Terran Crusade's fleet were flung into the Maelstrom by a ritual performed by the Demon Prince, Magnus the Red. Trapped within the labyrinthine tides of the Immaterium, the forces of the Terran Crusade steadily declined due to continued demonic assaults. Guided by a beacon received by the Asuryani Farseer, Eldrad Ufran, the Terran Crusade navigated their way towards salvation. Ambushed at the graveyard of ships marking the path to their freedom, the Red Corsairs, led by the Lord of Change Kairos Fateweaver, infiltrated the Voidcraft of the fleet. Chaining the Avenging Sun with bonds forged from his own guilt, Kairos forced the fleet to surrender. Imprisoned within a Blackstone fortress gifted to the Red Corsairs by the Despoiler, the emancipation of the Terran Crusade came from an unlikely ally. Cypher, the enigmatic fallen angel, with aid from his men, the Eldar Shadowseer, Silandri Veilwalker, and her own Harlequins, ensured the escape of the humans in exchange for Cypher to have an audience with the Emperor. Opening a webway portal to Terra within the heart of the Starfort, Veilwalker led the Terran Crusade as they combated Khornate and Tzeentchian demons, attempting to thwart their escape. Facing the Bloodthirster of Khorne, Skarbrand the Exiled One in single combat, Guilliman avenged the death of the Black Templar and Emperor's champion, Marius Amalric, who had inflicted a severe wound upon the greater demon's hide. Exiting the webway, finding themselves within the Sol system, upon the moon of Luna, Magnus the Red made one last attempt to prevent Guilliman from reaching Terra. Aided by the Sisters of Silence and Imperial Fist chapter of Astartes, the Terran Crusade fought the 15th Legion. Defeating Magnus in single combat, the null field created by the Silent Sisterhood allowed Guilliman to banish the Demon Primarch by impaling him with the Sword of the Emperor and casting him into the webway portal. Sealing the portal forevermore to prevent future invasions by those wishing to harm Terra, Veilwalker departed with her band of Harlequins. After many battles and trials of immense pressure, the Avenging Sun set foot once more upon the soil of Holy Terra. Approaching the Eternity Gate, guarded by the Custodian Shield Captain, Adrotinus, Guilliman alone would be permitted to gain audience with the Emperor before the Custodians arrested Cypher and his band of fallen angels. It had been 10,000 years since last they had spoken, yet now Roboute Guilliman stood in the presence of his long-suffering father. Gone was his noble visage, for little more than bones, wires, and ancient tissue held together his carcass, yet the master of mankind imparted his wisdom for a full solar day. Feeling his Genefather's cold indifference to any pretense which could be regarded as human, the Emperor treated his returned son alike to a cherished weapon of war, rather than his progeny. Deducing his character to have been worn away through millennia of unimaginable suffering. Despite the loss of all that he once was, the Emperor's vision to preserve humanity had outlasted all other concerns. Addressing the assembled gathering outside the throne room of the Emperor, Roboute Guilliman declared himself the reinstated Lord Commander of the Imperium. After millennia of governance by the High Lords of Terra, the Avenging Sun had usurped their authority, standing as the single greatest authority of humanity, as proxy to the Emperor himself. Promising a new age of reclamation of humanity's former glory, the Emperor's dream for a prosperous future was not dead yet. A new era, the era Indomitus, had begun, and as his first act, Lord Commander Guilliman observed the culmination of Belisarius Caul's second imperative task. Upon the world of Mars, Roboute witnessed the awakening of the Primaris Space Marines, long-dormant sons of humanity, drawn from the wake of the Siege of Terra and implanted with innovations of the Archmagos. Faster, stronger, and more advanced breeds of Space Marines than their firstborn peers, this next iteration of the Adeptus Astartes were unquestionably superior. The many chapters of the Space Marines had endured untold losses throughout the millennia, some of their legacies extinct by virtue of their sacrifices made in facing the endless threats of the Void. Yet now, even the most beleaguered of chapters could be reinforced, resupplied, and reinstated as battle-ready. The Despoiler's actions during the 13th Black Crusade had tipped the scales of power throughout the galaxy, and to oppose such unremitting foes, the Primaris had never been more necessary. Testing these warriors during the Battle of the Lion's Gate, these trained yet unexperienced warriors proved nonetheless overwhelmingly effective in braving the fires of war. Khorne, the blood god of chaos, cared not for the schemes of its conniving brethren and sought to prove its superiority over the Four by launching an invasion of holy terror during the height of its strength and tearing the Emperor from his golden throne. 88 cohorts of Khorne's legions descended upon the Imperial Palace as the Custodian Guard, Sisters of Silence, and unnumbered sons of the Primaris Space Marines fought to preserve its holy soil. Blood poured and spilled thickest at the Lion's Gate, the red tide so immense that even the guns of the Imperial Palace could not staunch the flow. Khorne's brash assault never reached the Eternity Gate, for with Guilliman at the vanguard of the battle, no Chaos Spawn could match such a host of brilliant warriors clad in gold, ultramarine blue, and unpainted grey. Absolving the Adeptus Custodes of their shame in failing to protect the Emperor, Guilliman ordered them to once more garb their Oromite with capes of crimson and embark across the galaxy on a mission of utmost importance. Shepherding Primaris Space Marines to the chapter territories most in need of reinforcement, none would dare defy the will of the Emperor when imparted from the mouths of his restored and glorious Golden Host. Enacting the Indomitas Crusade to drive back the resurgent forces of chaos and reclaim the long-suffering territories of humanity from their enemies, Guilliman assembled the mightiest naval armada never before seen since the days of the Great Crusade. Bolstered by chapters such as the Imperial Fists as they ventured from planet to planet, the Imperium's influence grew exponentially. Xenos and heretics alike quailed as the Indomitas Crusade tore humanity's fiefdoms from the clutches of their foes, the wrath of humanity brought to bear, preventing the devastation of the Blood Angels of the world of Baal and salvation of near-extinct chapters such as the Crimson Fists. Yet at the peak of the Indomitas Crusade's glory, the ruinous powers attempted one last gambit to stifle humanity's revival. Following the birth of the Great Rift, Grandfather Nurgle, god of pestilence and decay, sought to widen the bounds of his garden. Commanding his willing servants Mortarion, the Pale King, and Typhus the Traveller to spread his influence across the vast territories of Ultramar, their invasion of the Scourge Star showed the first signs of Nurgle's corrupting influence. The Death Guard Legion laid waste to the mortal defenders, torturing those who survived their advances with concoctions and rituals, transforming their bodies into vessels of contagions. 7 demonic Plague Guard hosts, commanded by greater demons of Nurgle, infected the verdant paradisal landscapes of Ultramar, transforming them into disgusting parodies of life, replete with toxic miasmas, poisonous wildlife, and pustules of life forms which cannot be dignified as living entities. The Plague Wars of Ultramar enacted a toll never before inflicted upon the Ultramarines, and with word of the Death Guard's invasion, Rabute Guilliman made all haste to defend his realm. Arriving during 012.M41, with countless Primaris Space Marines and members of the Golden Host, the Avenging Sun drove back the pawns of Nurgle from bastions of Ultramar such as Iax, Espandor, and Konor. Reinstating the Tetrarch Council in order to better govern his realm in the image of their past legacy, Guilliman resolved to expand Ultramar to its former stature once the war was concluded in order to better defend its boundaries and fortify its current vulnerabilities. Shedding a drop of the Primarch's blood during the Battle of Parmenio, the Great Unclean One, Ku'gath, created a poison capable of killing even a superhuman Primarch using his Vitae. Entrusting the vile substance to the demon Primarch Mortarion, though Guilliman had succeeded in taking key resupply points of the system and vanquishing the demon engines, exacerbating the spread of disease and sickness, there was only one way such a battle would truly end. No war waged by a Primarch can conclude so long as he remains on the field. Thus did the Pale King know that to conquer Ultramar, the Avenging Sun must die by his hand. Upon the world of Iax, the the Primarchs dueled. Mortarion's godblight-coated weapon, Silence, clashing with the sword of the Emperor. Struck by Silence's edge, the godblight infected the avenging sun until its foul contagion seeped deep into his veins, the armor of fate eroding as the poison ate away his flesh. Roboute Guilliman was dead by Mortarion's hand, and all who looked upon his corpse felt their hearts sink at the sight of their sundered liege. Yet as the Pale King gloated at his victory, a bright light coursed through Guilliman's eyes. Levitating from the ground, imbued with the light of the Emperor, the Master of Mankind spoke through his champion and proclaimed a warning to the Lord of Plagues. Unleashing a torrent of searing flame from the sword of the Emperor, Nurgle's garden burned brightly as the power of the Master of Mankind humbled the Grandfather. Snatching Mortarion from the fray and retreating, Nurgle tended to the ashes of his garden as those of the Death Guard left behind fell to the blades of the Ultramarines. Roboute Guilliman had been restored by the light of the Emperor, and every champion and challenger of Chaos had been punished for their arrogance. For the Avenging Sun remains vigilant in casting back the darkness from all fronts, though as he stands alone, the burden placed upon his shoulders is unimaginable. The fate of humanity's survival rests in his hands, and although he is alike to a god of war, the Imperium endures the greatest threats it has ever seen in its history. Yet so long as the Lord of Ultramar lives and breathes, humanity shall rage against the dying of the light. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Yet the Avenging Sun shall not abstain from the fight. He sensed the cauldron's passing as a tolling, as of a bell's ring felt but not heard. The garden shook with an earthquake. The strange demon creature that dwelled there set up a cacophony of cries and moans. On the areas of Ajax that it overlaid, reality trembled and reasserted itself, and the garden began to fade.
Impossible,
Mortarion whispered. The corpse of his brother twitched. The armor of fate was a corroded shell, but somehow its power pack restarted, and lights blinked on systems all over it. Guilliman's blackened face turned to look at him. Mortarion felt something huge and dangerous moving through the warp, something he had not felt for a long time. Guilliman's back arched. The armor was humming now, giving off a psychic signature as arcane mechanisms within it powered on throughout. The earth shook again. A second toll of the unseen bell sent the denizens of the garden into panic. Trees cracked as they dragged up roots and attempted to lumber away. A million kinds of demon fly buzzed up from the corpse grounds and flew off in gathering swarms. Nurglings shrieked and waddled as fast as their little legs would carry them. Mortarion stood, hurriedly, raised Silence, and made to bring it down, to destroy Guilliman finally, take his soul as a sacrifice to the great god Nurgle, even if he could not take his worlds. But he could not move. Guilliman's eyes were glowing with pure, white power. The last slimes of his decayed flesh burned away, and a network of feathery capillaries spread in their place, bearing new blood unsullied by the godblight. The metal of the armor of fate shimmered, impossibly remaking itself. Bright decorations appeared as tarnish cracked and fell away. Wires grew and reconnected as surely as Guilliman's skin was growing back. The neverground of the garden shook hard. Demons large and small were screaming, emerging from their hiding places and fleeing in riotous stampede. Away in the distance, ever visible wherever you went in the garden, Nurgle's black muds shivered, and Mortarion felt another presence, as powerful as the first, looking at him from behind its ever-shuttered windows. The ground cracked and broke, flaring whiteness blazed from the crevasses. Guilliman's corpse rose up and hung in the air, supported by a pillar of radiance, and slowly turned so he was upright. He reached out, and the Emperor's sword speared in his hand and burned with the fires of 1,000 suns.
He speaks to me, brother,
said Rabute Guilliman.
Does he not speak to you?
The unbearable radiance enfolded Guilliman, so glaring Mortarion threw up his hands.
Father,
Mortarion said, and his voice quailed like a little boy discovered in the course of some small but unforgivable crime.
I am his right hand, brother,
said Guilliman.
I am his general, his champion. I am the avenging sun. By his might I am preserved.
The landscape flickered between the blasted battlefield of Ajax and the garden of Nurgle. The ground of the garden was rolling.
This is impossible. You should be dead.
There was a creak of a door, faint but portentous, coming from the manse. The doors never opened to Nurgle's house. Mortarion turned very, very slowly and looked to the great house. A single, tiny shutter on an insignificant gable was open, a square of deeper blackness in the black wood.
Forgive me, Father!
He quailed. Guilliman looked past him, and something looked through him, seeing all worlds at once. Eyes as bright as the centers of galaxies stared at the black, forbidding house.
You are a traitor,
Guilliman said, in a voice that was not quite his own.
You have brought low all that could have been, but you are as much a victim as a monster, Mortarion. Perhaps one day you might be saved. Until then, you must go back to the master you chose.
No!
Mortarion cried, but it was too late. Some force reached for him and yanked hard. He flew back, over and over through the garden, towards the black house of the Plague God. He felt a moment of perfect terror before he flew in through the open portal, and it slammed shut behind him, trapping him with an altogether more awful god. Nurgle was displeased. Guilliman looked over the garden of Nurgle. He was between two worlds. The warp was a shifting thing, never constant. The garden was a collection of ideas. It had no true form, and through it he could see a million other worlds that underpinned it. The dreams of souls living and dead, and past that, as if glimpsed through banks of glittering sea mist that evaporated before the morning sun, the battlefield of Ajax.
Hear me!
Guilliman's voice boomed through eternities. The sword blazed higher, until the fire of it threatened to burn out time.
I am Rabute Guilliman, last loyal son of the Emperor of Terror. It is not your destiny to end today, God of Plague. But you know that I am coming for you, and I will find you, and you will burn.
He gripped the sword of the Emperor two-handed and raised it high. Rising waves of fire ripped into the garden. From the great manse a cry of rage sounded, as a wall of flame hotter than 1,000,000 suns devoured everything in its path, finally breaking and receding within the yards of the black walls of Nurgle's house. Its infinite hall shook. Mossy tiles fell from the roof. Sodden timbers steamed.
This is a warning. The warp and the materium were once in balance. For too long, you have tipped the scales. Understand that it is not only the warp that is capable of pushing back. This realm is not real. Only will is real, and none may outmatch my will. Be assured, Lord of Plagues, and convey this message to your brothers, that I do not speak for myself. I speak for the Emperor of Mankind.
Then he was falling forever until his knee hit the ground, and he woke into reality once more. Guilliman opened his eyes. He was kneeling on the ground of Ajax. The sword of the Emperor was buried point down in the cracked earth. Its fires turned everything around him to glass. Burned out suits of armor lay around him. Only he was untouched. Mortarion was nowhere to be seen. He stood. Whatever presence had inhabited him was gone. The air was clean. There was no sign of taint nearby, and he knew that the Emperor's sword had burned the godblight away. Natase's psychic shield still limned the dueling ground, but through it he could see clearing skies and clouds heat-shocked by lance fire. A ferocious orbital bombardment was laying waste to Mortarian's army, which retreated, leaderless and outmatched, under the cover of poisoned fogs. The air crackled. All around him, golden giants appeared. Further out, other spikes of energy announced the arrival of more custodians into the rear of the Death Guard's lines. There would be a great slaughter of the traitors before the day was done. Maldovar Kolquan stepped forward. "Is it done then?" "It is done. Mortarian is gone. His network is broken," Rabute Guilliman said. "The Plague Wars are over." And he sheathed the sword of the Emperor. This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. Humanity's survival remains in decline, yet with the return of the Avenging Sun, the bleeding has been staunched. Hope has been in rare supply for 10,000 years of misery and suffering, yet the return of a son of the Emperor acts like a beacon to those who cast their gaze to his glory. In your own life, there shall be times of great struggle where all hope seems lost and deliverance naught but a fantasy. Yet in the depths of darkness, the light shines brightest, and should you choose to fight, saviors and emancipators are given time to act. So never give in to futility nor nihilism, for there are those who shall answer the call for sanctuary, and with time more shall rally to your banner, alike to the loyal sons of the Master of Mankind.